Free Golden Eagles for War Thunder. Download the app in the description below.
Close air support. Definition: in military tactics, close air support, shortened as CAS, is defined as air action such as airstrikes by fixed or rotary winged aircraft against hostile targets that are in close proximity to friendly forces, and which require detailed integration of each air mission with fire and movement of these forces and attacks with missiles, aircraft cannons, machine guns, and even directed energy weapons such as lasers. That is the definition written on the almighty Wikipedia page. Now, myself included, and I think a lot of people who are in the community, I didn't know this. For me, if you say close air support, what springs to mind is I'm flying a plane in ground battles and I kill everything I see. Plane, SPA, tank, heavy tank, medium tank, light tank, tank destroyer. If it moves and if it doesn't have a friendly logo on it, I'm gonna shoot at it. So, when I sat down to make this series of German close air support is bad, which was supposed to be a bit of a kind of ironic, sarcastic approach to the community, which for a long time was complaining that the discrepancy of, obviously HVAR and RP3 rockets being supposedly too good, and I think they were historically inaccurate. Whether they were too good is a discussion for a different day. They were primarily pointing out that Germany didn't have similar aircraft. And I wanted to point out that even by using some of these planes like the Fokker 490 U-12, which I don't think anybody even flies, if you look at the statistics on Thunderskill, like nobody flies these planes. You could use these vehicles that have no rockets, no bombs, only 2 MG-151s, and you can actually use them for ground pounding, but you can also use them for air superiority. Now, for me, both things are the same. If I'm flying a plane and I see a tank, I want to shoot at it. It's what I feel is my job, because if I'm waiting, let's say I want to do air superiority, right? If I want to just kill enemy planes, and there's an SPA on the ground, well, I gotta kill the SPA before it kills me, so I'm going ground pounding now from what I'm supposed to be doing air superiority. So you're always kind of multitasking left, right, center, and so for me, in the game, if you say close air support, or if you ask me in chat what close air support is, for me, the definition of close air support is anything that you do with an aircraft in ground battles. I don't differentiate, air superiority from ground pounding, because at the end of the day, in the meta that we currently have, it's the same thing. Albeit, recently, with patch 1.71, you could almost say that close air support has become air superiority, because you can't really effectively kill enemy tanks no more. Here's the big reveal. Now, since the last video was a little bit of a fuck up on my end, I do apologize. How about this time I don't show you a bad plane? How about this time I show you one of the greatest vehicles for ground pounding that's been made for this game ever? And I didn't even know it existed. It's called the TAR-152. Not the H1, but the C3. It comes at a battle rating of 5.7, it comes with some really neat armament, and a cheeky MK108 cannon. Now, the MK108 cannon can carry HVAP, and you've guessed it, HVAP is something that Germany has that other nations don't. It's found on the Horten, it's found on the Dorniers, it's even found on the Me262 Narwhal at 6.7, albeit I've heard rumors about AP shells being better there due to post-penetration effects. I might have to test it out, albeit not a huge fan of single-cannoned fighters. The thing behind the TAR-152C3 is that at 5.7, it falls into every single German lineup between 5.7, which is the main lineup you'll be using with the Tiger H1 and the Tiger E, up until 6.7. So let that sink in. This is an aircraft at 5.7 you'll be using in 5.7, 6.0, 6.3, and potentially 6.7 if you haven't actually unlocked your, HE16, sorry, your Arado B2 and your Narwhal, and perhaps if you have the premium A2A from the winter event last year. So here's a valid point of view, right? Let's take a Griffin Spitfire. This is I think the Griffin Spitfire Mark 24, ever since I first played in Squadron events, that was last year in November, that was when I first realized how good close air support could potentially be. I think it's become, kind of stigmatized to the point where it is the meta, You get 8 RP3 rockets, it's very maneuverable, easy to fly, heavy armament, kind of run-of-the-mills, easiest to play. And I think for a lot of cases, British did and still have some of the easiest close air support aircraft in the game. So if you take a look at a Griffin Spitfire and you compare it to the likes of the Germans, what can a Tau 152 even do against a Griffin Spitfire if it's played correctly, right? In a 1v1, I mean, if you had to choose, I would choose virtually any plane over the Tau 152 C3. But there's a catch. Catch is that we're not playing air battles, we're not playing a 1v1 duel, we're playing ground forces. In ground forces, there's something called a different spotting mechanic. There is none. Essentially, the way you fly aircraft in ground forces is not by, you know, putting full smoke on and making yourself visible, albeit you can do that once in a while. It's fun. You fly low to the ground. You fly at high speed. You engage targets that are enemy aircraft spawning in, and you try to eliminate them without them even knowing that you ever approach them. It almost gives you this Eric Hartmann effect when he was talking about how he was taking out Altu Sturmovix over the Eastern Front, and essentially he wouldn't fire until the enemy aircraft was completely covered in his front panel. And this is something that I find extremely, you know, immersive myself, is that by eliminating enemy aircraft with virtually no ammunition required, with no need to maneuver with them, but just zoom climb up at them, is something that you can start using very, very effectively. Now, obviously the enemy can start to counter that, and if you do get a good enemy close air support pilot, sure, they're going to give you a run for the money, but the difference between, you know, a casual bomber or an attacker with rockets is that those rockets and bombs add weight, they add drag, they add, you know, a negative maneuverability effect. With a Tau 152 or a Horton, there is none of that. You know, the vehicle is about as heavy and about as maneuverable when you first spawn it in than when you're about to return to base because you've run out of ammunition, if we exclude the couple of maybe kilograms of the shell's weight. And the biggest trick behind the Tau 152 is that you don't actually focus on eliminating the enemy ground forces. What you do is you can focus on, you know, light targets. Since we're playing in 5.7, there's going to be a lot of Hellcats. There's going to be a lot of M19s, M42 Dusters, ZSU-37s, Type 65s, a lot of these open-top vehicles that you can very easily kill even without the HVAP shell. The HVAP shell just kind of adds a bit of an effect to it. You can attack any target from above. You can go for the engine deck. Usually you have to go for the engine deck. Albeit, again, if they're lightly armored, you can go straight through the turret on the top, like a T-34, and boom, you get yourself a very easy kill. It's multitasking. You know, when I think of close air support, I think, what can I take out that maximizes damage? Now, I can spawn in an 82 Skyraider and think to myself, okay, I've got, you know, 10 HVAR rockets and 2 Tiny Tims and a heavy bomb in the middle. That's great. But I'm slow, I've got weak guns. As soon as an SPA nearly about as much looks at me, I'm going to blow up. I want to have something that I can use to evade SPA. I want to have something that can kill SPA. I want to have something that can fight against enemy planes, something that can defensive fly, something that can push into a head-on maybe, something that can go against tanks. And I don't think I've found a vehicle quite as versatile as the Tau 152 C3 is. It literally covers every single aspect that you would want in a close air support aircraft from a point of view of an aggressive player who wants to have a lot of little pinpoints all over the map. You know, there's never a point where you would say to yourself, oh no, there's a heavy tank on B, I can't engage him because I don't have enough, you know, penetration on my guns. And this is the difference between a Spitfire Griffin and a Tau 152 C3. The Griffin is going to drop its load of, you know, 8 RP3 rockets, and then it's going to become a fighter, which is great because it's done damage, and now it can fly around and it can just, you know, destroy any enemy close air support coming in. So it goes from close air support into what you would say air superiority. With a Tau 152 C3, you do a little bit of everything as you go, and because the plane isn't a turn fighter, because it requires long, gradual passes, a lot of flap usage, and quite a bit of Focke-Wulf knowledge when it comes to defensive flying, it's almost working like make a pass at an enemy tank, shoot at an SPA, engage the enemy player that just spawned in a plane, eliminate them, return back to the main battlefield, go for another tank, straight for another SPA, go back for the aircraft. You're just kind of swapping lanes over and over again. You're doing a little bit of everything. And the reason why this works so very effectively is because of the way hit multipliers work. This is something that I learned back in, I think, April, when I was testing and spading the LA-15, and I hated it, I really did. In air battles, it keeps getting updated, so I was flying the LA-15 in ground forces, but you can't kill anything, you know, especially not at 8.0, and I was playing 9.0, so there's no open-top SPA, there's no open-top tanks, nobody plays M18s. What I did was, I would just shoot at engine decks of tanks and try to do multiple hits. For one hit, you get like, you know, 20 silver lines, but if you get 3 consecutive hits in a row, you get a multiplier, and that multiplier can really accumulate a bunch of spawn points. Now, this was almost abusing the spawn point mechanic to a point because you were just getting free spawn points and your position on team was rising by just, you know, strafing people. You maybe get an assist or two, but you do not do any damage. You're not progressing or helping your team out. It was a cheeky way to play the game, and as long as your team was effective enough and you spawned the plane in whenever you were winning, you weren't actually dragging your team down. I still think, and albeit this is a very cheeky way to put it, but you know, as long as your team is winning, you can do whatever you want. You're very free. You can screw around a bit. But if your team is losing, camping in the back of them isn't going to help. Strafing vehicles isn't going to help. You got to start making work. So as long as you're winning, you can kind of have a little bit of leverage to test stuff out. That's why if you're going to be testing rockets out, if you're going to be testing out a different flank maneuver or different play style, do it when your team is good and you don't actually jeopardize their position. So to come back to the C3 and explain this one more time, it's the combination of what you have been called out for, you've called me out for, which is air superiority. By maintaining air superiority, by being able to eliminate enemy SPA, by being able to halt enemy heavy tanks, medium tanks, or in a lot of cases even destroy them, you can do a lot of work on the map. And I think a simple spawn of a Type 152 C3 could cause to an enemy team not being able to hold 2 of the 3 capture points. You're able to eliminate enemy SPA, which in a lot of cases means the enemy gets out of the game. This is the important thing about spawn points mechanics. If you know which player is respawning when, right? You can't, look, you don't know who's playing what. It's a blind guess. You don't know which player, like if you look at the guy on top of the team, you can't really tell which vehicle he's in. Now, if you look at the kill feed and say, okay, he's in the T-34, he's doing the capture point, I'm going to guess he's here. You can guess work where the players are going to be. Usually if you're on top of the team, you're, you know, flying in a plane later on. If you pay attention to, what you can do is you can focus people who you know have just spawned in, for example. There's a guy in a medium tank, he goes and flanks the entire map, comes into your spawn in an MAT and decides to spawn camp you, you kill him, and he respawns SPA. That person, if you kill him as soon as he spawned in, he's out of the match. That means you've evened out the odds. If your team has 10 players, and their team had 10 players, they now had 9 players. 10 versus 9, much better odds. Do that 2 more times, and boom, you have a 10 versus 7. Start eliminating enemy planes as soon as they spawn in. If they spent all their spawn points for that one plane, boom, that's, you know, 10 versus 6, 10 versus 5, and once you have a 2-to-1 ratio of team members, that match is more or less over. And this is the thing that I've talked about quite a bit, is air superiority isn't there just because you can, you know, have this 1v1 duel engagement that, albeit I think looks pretty good and it's fun to do. In a lot of cases, it's a matter of spawn point trading. If I'm flying a plane and I've run out of ammunition, I've done my damage, and there's an enemy in close air support, and we've won the match, and he's like one of the 3 guys standing, I'm going to give him the kill. I'll fly into him, I'll get a few extra hits, but I'll let him get the kill, because there's no point flying back to base for 3 minutes. It just drops my activity time, it gives me less research points, but it preserves that one precious KD ratio, which I couldn't care less about. What I do care about is, I care about players respawning, I care about players having fun and learning how SPA work, and I like, in often cases, giving players a free kill because, you know, it's benefiting them and you're not really at a big of a loss. And so there is this, you know, amount of good karma being flowing around, which is similar to, obviously, what happened to me in a lot of cases in these tournaments that I did in 1 versus 1s, where certain people will actually let you win to progress because they're not losing much, but, you know, they're giving you an option to win a lot more. So to wrap it all up, if you're flying something like a, you know, an Arado, a bomber, focus on targets where you can do maximum damage. For me, it's always been a trick, do maximum damage with everything you play. And if you do that, it's not just that you're getting more research points, you should be having more fun, you should be receiving more points, you should be getting motivation for that, and at the end of the day, you're helping your team win because you're doing more damage than the enemy team can possibly counter. And with the Type 152 and the majority of German planes, if I have to say, German close air support is a little bit different than, you know, the average Allied. It doesn't rely on rockets, it doesn't rely solely on bombs either, and I wouldn't rely on bombs myself because still, if you're not familiar with the sort fuse or the way timing delays work, you know, something like a Focke 490 F8 is great. Drop the 1,000 kilogram bomb and you're bound to kill whatever is in the vicinity. But it isn't going to give you that satisfaction of, let's say, precision bombing in an LA-7 with 100 kilogram bombs dead on to the top of a Tiger. And because of that, with German close air support, I always say, spawn it in when you know there's something for you there to get. Don't spawn a plane in just because you can. You know, flying around in a fighter where there's nothing you can strafe, where there's no plane you can shoot down, where there's no target you can engage, you're leverage. Because you can't do the objective in the sky. The objective is always on the ground. It's tanks that win matches. What planes do is, planes make it easier or harder for those tanks to carry games. And so that long old definition of, you know, close air support wins games is more or less, you know, completely bogus. It's bullshit. What wins matches is players taking tanks and going after 1, 2, or all 3 of the objectives that you have on the map. What planes can do, or at least could do in patch 1.69 though, is that they could bring a dead game back to life through 1 or 2 superb players on the team. Now, since that isn't possible anymore, I think patch 1.71 is bringing back to game this very, very big requirement for lineups and spawn point management. Since we haven't seen any changes to the way spawn point system works, it's now just an extra bit more important to actually get a good lineup and try to spawn in as many vehicles as possible. Keep in mind that if we all spawn in just once, that means there's less kills on average you can get. Matches will still take roughly the same amount of time because somebody's always camping in the back of the map. What you want is you want to maximize the amount of kills you get in the time you spent in the match, and also you want to focus towards winning and bringing your team to a better position. And as a reward for having to sit through 16 minutes of absolute buffoon rambling, I'm now going to give you a bit of a reward for it. In the description of this video, as well as on my Twitch channel, if you type in !lineups, you will find a file in the Google Docs. I've expanded the old lineup file from the 5.7 up to 8.3, from a 2.3 to an 8.7. That is a whopping 20 different lineups in all the 5 nations that you'll find in ground forces. Now these are not finalized. There's still certain vehicles missing. You'll notice that certain close air support vehicles have not been filled out. Certain medium tanks, certain light tanks are missing. It's still work in progress. However, it is massively evolved from what it was before. And for any of you who have questions regarding the document, by all means post it in the comment section below. I'll be reading all of those. If you have any suggestions though, by all means PM me on Discord through private messages, and I will try to fill out the gaps of any of these vehicles. And also, as we do stream on Twitch every single day, I'll try to play some of these math ratings, put some of these works into actual progress, and see if I myself can spot certain problems, certain vehicles missing, and certain vehicles worthy of being added. Hope you enjoyed the video, hope you enjoyed the series, and we'll be back with, hint hint, a thicker review than last time. That's it for today. Catch you in the next one. Toot toot.